This video is a mega mix of a series of conversations that I've had with my friends on how role-playing games have been an incredibly powerful tool in discovering who we are. My name's Rich, this is Renegade Rolls, and I'm going to hand over to some friends of mine. I'm joined by the spiciest, the diciest. It's Nico Jagayo, everyone. I'm joined by Rowan and Carrie, two of my fabulous improv friends. The full interviews, about an hour long each, are available on the Renegade Rolls Patreon. These ones are free and you don't need to be a member in order to check them out.
I was playing a lot of characters that kind of had trans stories, characters who, didn't feel good in their bodies for certain reasons and things like that without ever having realised that they were me kind of expressing myself in that way. So the kind of crossover didn't exist in my mind until I was out of trans. I was out as trans and I started to analyse these things more, and I was like, wait a minute, every single character I've ever played has been a trans analogy. What is going on here?
I think for me, again, it was a lot of like hindsight. Because my first character, Odie, emo druid, again, I think I was playing her as I thought she should have been played. So one of the other players, he was totally in for it and he was absolutely lovely. I wanted how to have a romance with this character because I was like, I am a female elf and she's like mysterious and beautiful and she should get with another elf because that's how things should go. And then as I became more comfortable with my gender, I was like, oh, actually, I spoke to my DM and I was talking about, I think I've been using her as a way to perform gender rather than actually play a character.
I have always enjoyed elvish characters because even as males, right, they have soft features, which leans towards the androgyny that I seek. I've always been queer, and I think that that's one of those things where it was like, oh, this is what they mean by it was always true and you just didn't know it. But growing up, people just thought I was gay all the time. And I grew up in a pretty conservative town where I got bullied for being gay, even though I wasn't gay. Which sucks because there's just both the all the awful things that come with being bullied for who you are, but then also the sense of invalidation and gaslighting, hey, you gay head, and it's like, but I'm not gay. Why am I getting in trouble for that? And then I would say that I was in my early college years when even the idea of gender identity and that being separated from sexuality presented itself to me in the universe. And I was like, oh.
My egg cracking moment, as they call it, came at a Halloween party last year. So Halloween 2024, when I dressed as Figurath Faith from Dimension 20 Fantasy High. And I went all out for the costume. And in years previous, I'd always dressed as women on Halloween and thought nothing of it, but then kind of just been silly, jokey costumes. Whereas this one, I was like, I'm doing everything. And then I put it on and looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, oh no. Oh dear.
First one I ever played, his name was Clyde, and he's a centaur rune knight. And he had he was shirtless, he had chest surgery scars, and near the end of the day I just improvised one being I'm a trans, he's Scottish, I'm a trans man in the suffering, in the pain. And it was after that monologue I was like, oh no, I think I called myself out.
We all know the three genders are male, female, and centaur.
It's true.
Yeah.
Have you deliberately made characters to explore your identity?
I have now. Since coming out, I certainly have. And I think it's because I've started to focus on it more. And I've also evolved characters in a way that I can explore my identity, characters that I kind of already had. So the likes of, we've got a game coming up on Renegade Rolls actual play channel, plug. I don't know how much I can talk about it, but I will. Yeah. So my character in it is a trans woman, and I've done that. I didn't start creating a character because it was a very collaborative character creation process. I came into it having no idea who I wanted to play, but I am always very conscious now when I'm creating characters of going, right, what is it that I want to explore? And I think a kind of key facet of the character I've created, Pidge, is that she has got to a point where she is actually happy with herself. She's recently transitioned in the last few years. Of course, we're playing it in a world where, you know, transphobia isn't really a thing, which is always lovely to play. But her thing is going, right, I finally feel good enough for myself. Am I good enough for other people?
I played a teenage girl, 13-year-old, called Chloe Targuin, where she used to be the heiress of like a mafia family. But bearing in mind, this is like typical D&D fantasy land, and we have the mafia. And she talked in a Brooklyn accent, and it was the way she would talk.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. But she got disinherited and given to her cousin Tyler.
We hate Tyler.
Yeah,
We
screw you,
fucking
Tyler.
hate Tyler.
Ugh.
And because they couldn't take her seriously because of her autistic fixation with pigeons, they were like, "Oh, well, she really liked pickles before, and we thought maybe that could be a euphemism for a gun, but with pigeons, that no,
Yeah.
Tyler can have the mafia." Even though I was playing a girl, like it didn't feel like I was betraying myself. Like it was a character I was playing, and I felt comfortable in myself in order to do that.
People who like to become other people are also people who end up marginalized in society. Who would have thought? You know, so I myself know that it would be so cool if I could just like be what it is I want to be and also have magical powers. And I think that there's a, you know what? I'll put it this way. Games, TTRPGs appeal to queer people for the same reason like acting and theater and stuff do. You just get to be so much more, and it's fun. And I've met so many queer people through the TTRPG scene, and also neurodivergent people. So it's there's a huge overlap there, and I would say that I've gotten to really feel comfortable in being myself because by complete coincidence or not coincidence, all of these TTRPG circles I've wound up in are so heavily queer, so I don't feel out of place or a fish out of water. Or, you know, like when I go other places and it's like, oh, we're doing sports and stuff, I got to act a certain way or people will think I'm a nightmare. Versus if I'm in a TTRPG space, I feel so comfortable being like, yo, what's up? I'm here. I'm queer. I gave up beer. So that I would say that these days that's it's really given me a place to learn how to be myself around other people.
It's a bit bizarre because I think there's always this stereotype, especially for trans people, that if you're trans femme, you always grew up playing the female characters in video games and female characters in TTRPGs, and vice versa for trans mas, which wasn't the case for me.
Lately, I've tried to make characters that are more like me. Ironically, I don't make female characters because it bums me out. Yeah, because I don't have a problem with my masculine side or portraying characters that are male because there's a degree I can identify with that, because I guess because I have had for so long, right? And I know that if it's a male person, I can mimic that character's voice more and, you know, the way that person carries themselves more. And then with a non-binary character, obviously, that's just what I am. But then with a female character, it bums me out because I'm like, oh, I will never be, if I go too deep into manifesting something that is like something I wish I could be in the same way my other non-binary or male characters are, I will be constantly reminded that that will never be me, and that will make me sad.
Have you always felt welcome in the hobby?
I have, but I think that's very specifically because I am very well able to curate who I play with. You know, the groups that I play with are wonderful. And like my D&D groups were some of the first people that I came out to. You know, I messaged them this was before I even I came out to maybe like 3 or 4 people, and I wasn't convinced. I was like, maybe I'm just experimenting with something. Maybe I'll be over this in a month. But with the groups of people that I play with, I felt so comfortable and safe with them because they are people that I've very much curated to play with and just being wonderful people, that I was able to go to them. I want D&D to be a safe space for me. Here is who I think I am right now. I don't take that as a given because I do know for a fact that the nerd space can seem very, very open and accepting. And in reality, there are a lot of it isn't, a hell of a lot of it isn't. There's a lot of, gaming stores and things like that I wouldn't be comfortable going in and joining an open table.
The TTRPG space is not a monolith. I think that I have been fortunate enough to be in sectors of the TTRPG space where most people are very welcoming and stuff like that. And I've even definitely been in places where like the people I'm around aren't hip with all that, but like they're respectful about it.
Every table I've been on has been welcoming, but I think in execution it's been misplaced.
My least favorite phrase in TTRPGs is "it's what my character would do." And just don't make a character as an arsehole.
If we were being really true with our characters, the party would have split up ages ago. But we have to constantly find reasons why they need to sit together.
It's an improv scene.
Every once in a while, I'll play an NPC that they themselves take themselves very seriously, or, because they're very attractive, or they're very powerful, or they're just very influential. And it's those rare NPCs that give me these tiny little windows into what it's like to just be that confident or command that authority. And I'm like, oh, this is like going to a theme park. I'm down for it like once for a brief amount of time, and then I don't need to do it for months. I once made an NPC that was like a very attractive woman, and I was describing like the slit that goes up the dress. And my players, interestingly, my femme identifying or femme presenting players were the ones who were the most like, oh my, like they literally like got like shy and embarrassed as we were role playing the scene. And I was like, whoa, is that what it's like to be hot?
Do you have any advice for folks who are maybe wanting to explore identity through TTRPGs, either through gender and sexuality or just different aspects of personality?
You already are. I promise you, if you play TTRPGs, you already have explored your identity through characters. If you play video games, you already have. If you do any kind of make-believe in your adult life, you're already doing it because you can't not do it, Like, I fundamentally believe that anything that we create, we put a bit of ourselves into. And so if you are thinking to yourself, and it doesn't have to be to do with gender or sexuality, it can be literally anything. If you want to have a closer look at yourself, look at the things that you create and the characters that you create and go, what is it that makes this character tick? What is it that makes this character interesting? And crucially, what is it about this character that resonates most with me? And you'll already be halfway there because you've already been doing it, like, guarantee it. It's...
Hindsight is a beautiful thing.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of like practical stuff, I would say if you want to explore your gender, I think it's so much easier if you reserve it for like a one shot or like a very short campaign.
There are certain characters that my players will make that I identify with, and those are the ones that I've been able to make the most compelling narratives for, because I think to myself, if I identified with that person for this reason, what were these like key moments in my life or things that I struggled with or were very hard for me, or moments where I had to like overcome something, and there were these compelling situations that happened, compelling from a third person perspective. It just sucked to have them happen to you, in real life, but looking back on it, I'm like, oh, those were moments of growth. And so I put those characters in those situations from my own life experiences. And very often you get a player who's like, oh man, because they're like really trying to think like, oh, I have this issue with this character who's my mother, and they made this huge sacrifice, but the sacrifice is something I'm like morally opposed to, you know. What do I do there, you know? And they have to, like, it's a real chin scratcher.
Don't settle. Because if you've got a game that you play once a week, every week, and you're playing a character that through some means or facet is a version of you that you don't get to see in the real world, whether that be gender or sexuality or just an aspect of yourself that you're trying to explore, or it might be that the character is very brave and you don't feel yourself to be very brave, or your character is, you know, very charming and you don't feel yourself to be that. I think settling for that is massively doing yourself a disservice, of going, well, I get to play this fantasy of being who I want to be 3 hours a week, and maybe that's enough. But if you've crafted out the time to create a character that's improving themselves and is living life in a way that you want to be living, and the only way you're exploring that is through that character, then you're not doing enough. And that's a very tricky thing to understand and to notice about yourself. But I think you can't just settle for playing make-believe with who you want to be and who you believe yourself to be. Use it as a tool and then apply those things in your life. Again, whether it be the bigger questions of gender and sexuality or the smaller things as well. Go, what is it that my character does really well in life? And could I also do that? Could I be brave and heroic and do all these wonderful things? And the answer is yes, you can.
I think that the real fantasy isn't constantly having to be a queer person overcoming adversity. I think the real fantasy is the adversity you're overcoming is due to the fact that, like, your identity being acceptable is not already the status quo. And I think that's why in my fantasy worlds, I like the idea that you can just as easily be a queer person without it being all of these super significant things to all the other characters, because it's just okay to be that way.
You don't have to do these like really huge drastic things. Like for me, I mean, yes, one of the first things I did gender-wise after I came out was chop off all my hair. But like, you don't have to do that. You can paint a pinky as your way of exploring your gender. Just a pinky. Like,
Just a pinky.
Just a pinky, that's okay. If you want to just like fill in your eyebrows, like that is okay. If you just want to invest in like a pair of shoes, like that is, I feel like we're always looking for that makeover montage. When actually, for me, even though, yes, drastic, I cut off all my hair, my sense of style and my sense of self has developed a lot, but like in incrementations over the years. So I think give yourself some grace and give yourself some time.
Sometimes it's not the most useful thing to just be a character who is already this perfect version of you that you want to see to explore that. Sometimes the more useful thing is to have a character with the flaws that you see in yourself and explore the story that it takes for them to overcome those flaws or overcome those things that you want to overcome in your life.
Maybe less of a gender thing, but I think you don't think too hard about making your character, and maybe you'll realise down the line that it actually might reflect a part of you that you've wanted to explore.
It is only your responsibility, no one else's, for you to find a group that you are happy with. Right? Not a group that says, I will suffer through these cons for the 1 or 2 pros. And the pro is every once in a while I get to do some basic arithmetic and roll some math rocks. You really do need to do some legwork to find that community or find that table. But it's so rewarding when you do. And then suddenly D&D stops becoming an obligation you have once a week, because it becomes that for some people. And it instead becomes this like a refreshing oasis that you can look forward to.
You're playing these games to have fun. And if you're not having fun, that's an issue.
Yeah, what are you doing with your Thursday night if you're not enjoying yourself?
But the most incredible thing you can do with TTRPGs is have the most fun ever, but also explore parts of yourself that you didn't know how to explore. And you can do that at the same time. And it's what I did for years, and I'm now actively doing. And I'm now having more fun than I ever had playing TTRPGs because I know who I am.
You're not going to explore parts of yourself if you keep playing that Asmodeus tiefling. Literally,
That's
try
very
anything else.
specific. That's very
That's
specific.
literally the first thing I thought of. I know lots of people play elves, and I know lots of people play tieflings. I'm like, guys, you need to try something else.
If your first character was a tiefling druid who was raised by wolves, you are trans. You are trans.
What a way to
Sorry.
close it. What a way to close it.